Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about a band that is beloved and I'd say influential, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about them in the VC. That's right, I'm talking about the Pogues. Now, the Pogues was a London-based band that played basically Irish folk music with a punk edge. The band was fronted by the amazing singer-songwriter Shane MacGowan. I always like to start the news off and tell you how I got into the band. And that's basically one day I walk into the record store, I'm flipping through, and in the import bin, I see this album by the Pogues. I pick it up, and I couldn't tell anything about it. The album was called Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash, and it had just come out as an import. I believe it was 85. And I looked at the cover, I flipped it over, it was on Stiff Records. Okay, selling point number one. Produced by Elvis Costello, selling point number two. So I bought it, took it home. Oh, I'm not a fan of Irish folk music. Not that I hate it, but I just don't really, listen to it in my spare time. So, the first listen, I was like, whatever. But the second listen, since I had no expectations, I was blown away by the songwriting. Just this amazing songwriting. Now, Shane MacGowan wasn't the greatest vocalist in the world, but he used his voice in a way that it just made sense with his music. He sounded like he was standing in the middle of an Irish bar, with a mug of beer and sloshing it around and singing. And it was just the most amazing thing. And the musicians, which included Jem Finer, Spider Stacy, Kate Reardon, James Fearnley, Andrew Rankin, this band was just so amazing. And the thing that really blew me away is the fact that these songs, you listen to this album and it was very hard to differentiate between the new songs that were written by Shane MacGowan and their covers of traditional songs. I mean, his songs, his melodies, his lyrics were, in my opinion, in tune with this real traditional Irish music and just a pure songwriting genius. But before I, wax poetic about Shane MacGowan and the Pogues, let's go back to the beginning. Now, Shane was part of the original punk scene. He was, more a fan at first. In fact, there's a movie I think called like the Punk Movie or something that was directed by Don Letts. And during one of the scenes, Shane MacGowan, as probably an elder teen, is out there slamming on the dance floor. That's like one of the earliest times that you could ever see Shane involved in that scene. But then he initially formed a band called the Nipple Erectors, and then they changed their name to the Nips. And there is a CD compilation here that is Shane right there with teeth. And this has all the songs that they recorded, as the Nipple Erectors and as the Nips. It starts out very punkish, hook-filled. But then, like with the Nips, like the song Gabrielle is just really like, it's almost mod power pop. It's great or whatever. But it was a short-lived band. Now, the singles came out, back in the late 70s, but this compilation wasn't put together until Shane had become famous in the Pogues. So let's start with the Pogues now. 1984 is the year of release for their debut album called Red Roses for Me. I find this very odd because it's like they took a picture of the band and they go, oh, gosh, Andrew isn't here. Maybe we should take a new picture. They said, nah, let's just put him over there in the corner. And it's just an odd cover. But this introduced the Pogues, and this is very much traditional Irish music played on Irish instruments, but it has a very punk attitude to it. Sped up and energetic and really, really wonderful. In fact, if you go back and listen to the songs on this album, Streams of Whiskey, things like this, you're blown away by the fact that these are Shane MacGowan originals. These aren't traditionals. They do traditional music on each album, a couple songs. But the songs that Shane wrote were so amazing that they sound authentic and they sound like they've been with us for years. This is a CD version that contains bonus tracks. That came out in 84. Now, the album that I was talking about that I got into the band on came out in 1985. It is called Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash. They just do everything better. The songs are better. The playing is better. The production by Elvis Costello is better. And really fantastic release. Pair of Brown Eyes, my favorite Pogue song, is on here. Sally McLennan, another big song. There's so many great Pogues classics on this album. This version here contains bonus tracks, including the Pogetry in Motion EP, which came out in 1986. And that has the second of my two favorite Pogue songs called Rainy Night in Soho. That also has London Girl, which got a lot of airplay on American radio, new wave type stations. And that really showed them breaking away from that Irish traditional sounding music and adding those kind of instruments into like a normal pop song. And it was just really absolutely wonderful. But Rum, Sodomy and the Lash, my favorite Pogues album, definitely worth your time. Now, Kate O'Riordan, she was the bass player of the band. Her and Elvis Costello went off and got married, and they were married for a few years, I think. But she was replaced by Daryl Hunt. But also around this time, like Terry Woods, Philip Chevron, all these guys came into the band and became very, very important parts of the band. And they would really show their true colors on their next album, which is called If I Should Fall From Grace with God. This is an incredible album. Yes, it is still that very Irish sounding music, but they're sort of starting to explore other types of world music songs. So they're playing all those great traditional Irish instruments, but they're going off into different musical universes. This is the album with Fairy Tale of New York, which is the duet with Kirsty MacColl that actually has become a classic Christmas song, their most famous song. This CD has some great bonus tracks on there. Some people would consider this the best Pogues album. I think it's almost there with Rum, Sodomy and the Lash, but there are people that are out there that would say If I Should Fall From Grace with God is actually a better album. But either way, if you buy either of them, you're definitely going to love them. This album, by the way, was produced by Steve Lillywhite, who was the husband at the time of Kirsty MacColl, and he's the one who actually suggested her singing on Fairy Tale of New York, which, as I said, is their most popular song. It's still wonderful and beautiful no matter how many times I hear it. 1989, out comes the album Peace and Love, another Steve Lillywhite production. Now, I do have the expanded version of this with some bonus tracks, but I couldn't find it, so I had to use just the regular version. This is an album where they're taking more musical journeys, more chances. Songwriting-wise, Shane's top of his game, but he's, letting a couple of the other guys maybe take over some more songs, per album. And they're all great songwriters. They all played together well. They're all extremely talented, great songwriters. By this time, they'd really gelled. But you can tell, unfortunately, Shane is he partook in a lot of alcohol, and it began to slow him down a little bit vocally, and he was slurring, and sometimes it was difficult to understand what he was singing, but still he was writing amazing songs, and the band were still exploring new musical avenues. It was really wonderful, but still that basic Irish punk folk was still there at the heart of what they did. The expanded edition of this includes the single Yeah, 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 which was another great single only. Really sounds like it's straight out of the 60s. It's got a Motown beat. I guess you could say, almost Northern Soul-like. Now, by 1990, I believe that Shane was proving to be very difficult to work with. He wouldn't show up, and the guys had to bring in more songs to the studio. And when he sang, if you hear the songs chronologically, you can tell that his faculties are sort of slowing down a little bit. Really sad because super talented. Some people call him a genius because the songs were so amazing and so incredible. Hell's Ditch came out in 1990. This was produced by Joe Strummer from The Clash, who would actually end up singing with the Pogues for a brief time. And this is another wonderful record, but again, it's more songs by more members of the band and less songs by Shane. And by the end of these sessions, they'd had enough, and Shane MacGowan was kicked out of the Pogues. And we'll go into Shane in a little bit, but let's continue a little bit more with the Pogues. Now, they did a couple tours with Joe Strummer as lead vocalist, and they would do live versions of London Calling and stuff like that. It was really, really wonderful. But longtime member Spider Stacy took over as the main vocalist for the band, and they put out the album called Waiting for Herb. And again, this is the expanded edition with a few bonus tracks. They had a hit off of this called Tuesday Morning, and I believe it was like the second biggest hit behind Fairy Tale of New York, or their biggest hit since Fairy Tale of New York. But I really enjoy the album. They're still exploring musically. Shane's not there, but each of the band members, we're talking Jem Finer and Terry Woods and Spider Stacy, all these guys, whoever's writing the songs, are still keeping in the tradition of the Pogues. They are definitely holding their own on this album. Like I said, that came out in 1993. Now, the next album is called Pogue Mahone. or Pogue Mahone, however you want to pronounce it. Basically, that means kiss my A. I'm not allowed to say words like that on YouTube. But anyway, this was another collection, and a couple of members had left again. So you're left still with Spider Stacy and a couple of fine members of the band. And this is not as strong as Waiting for Her, but it's still a fine album. Showed that these guys still keeping in that tradition of creating something from this unique and original sound that they had. I mean, there are so many bands that were following in their wake. I mean, I don't think bands like Dropkick Murphys would be around without the Pogues leading the brigade. But that was the last album. The band broke up after that. And they did get back together a few times. And I think around maybe the mid 2000s, 2010, they were touring. They were not recording anymore, but all the band had got back together and they would do their tours. And of course, extremely popular. Unfortunately, Shane continued to deteriorate, and very sad because alcohol is a bitch. But if you really want to take a deep look inside the Pogues, this may be a little pricey for some of you, but it's called Just Look Them Straight in the Eye and Say Pogue Mahone, the Pogues Box. This is a 5 CD set, and it contains their hits, a bunch of alternate takes, a bunch of unreleased tracks, some live tracks, demos. In fact, it even has like the original versions of Fairy Tale of New York. There's like 3 versions of it. One of them has their original bass player, Kate, singing the song, and it was produced by Elvis Costello. And there's just so much great music on this. You're still going to need to buy all the albums in order to get all the essential tracks. But this has a lot of those tracks, but tons more. Just look at how many songs are on there. You would think that this is all their albums plus bonus. No, it's kind of like just a greatest hits with tons of bonus tracks. Now, there are other greatest hits albums out. They're all like single CD discs, whatever. Any Pogues compilation, as long as it has Pair of Brown Eyes, Rainy Night in Soho, Fairy Tale of New York, London Girl, Yeah, 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 Yeah. If you grab something that's got all those songs on it, plus a lot more, definitely pick it up. Now let's get into Shane MacGowan here real fast. After he left the Pogues, he formed a band called Shane MacGowan and the Popes. That's right, Shane MacGowan and the Popes. And they put out their first album, The Snake, in 1994. This has a lot of great songs on it. One of the greatest is a song called Haunted, which is a duet with Sinead O'Connor. And if you forgot how beautiful her voice was, go back and listen to Nothing Compares to You, but listen to this, and she just sounds absolutely wonderful. That is Shane MacGowan and the Popes. The Snake came out in 1994. But it's very obvious, again, he's slurring words. Again, it's sad, but he's still a genius songwriter. And his next album came out in 1997. The same goes for this too. Great songs, but, he's not as sprightly as On the Ball as, back in, Rum Sodomy and the Lash and If I Should Fall from Grace with God. But one of my favorite Shane MacGowan solo songs is on this called Patty Rolling Stone. There's a lot of songs about Patty here. Now, that was the last studio album by Shane MacGowan and the Popes. There is a compilation, and it's called The Rare Old Stuff, and that has A's and B-sides and some rarities, and that's by Shane MacGowan and the Popes. Now, the Popes actually did continue to put out albums that Shane would appear on. The only one I think that actually had his name on the cover was the Popes featuring Shane MacGowan, and he's on a handful of tracks on that. Anyway, that's it. That's all I've got by the Pogues and Shane MacGowan. I hope that you enjoyed that. Right now, I put together a short medley featuring songs beginning with the Nips and going all the way up to Shane MacGowan and the Popes. Just features little short sound bites from some of their best known songs. And give it a listen. I hope that you enjoy this, and I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah! the measure of my dreams. Let them go, boys, let them go, boys. Let them go down in the mud when it's all dry. The boys of the NYPD choir still singing Go Away Bride, and the bells are ringing out for Christmas Day. And the cupboard's going up and they're putting down the pubs. It's just another bloody rainy day. Count the days, slowly passing by. Step by plane and flower. Tossed out a train and I've got it went off right. Now lust for family, now walking on the sunny side of the street. When it's summer inside and the moon is full of rainbows. When it's summer inside, then we go through many changes. When it's you, with your heart beating and your eyes shining, with your dreaming of me. Lying with you on a Tuesday morning. Oh no, I wish it was gone. I wanna get going before too long. Oh no, I wanna leave town. I can't drive my car 'cause they put it in the pound. How come? Yeah, how come? When I answer this dish love, but what vistas I've seen. How come? Yeah, how come? I ain't a superstitious fella, but it worries me. She took my hand, I know she's mine. Picking up the pieces of the past. When I walked before the dawn, trembling but and she'd gone. Now I know how it feels to be without her. So come. Give me that. Sure shot a horny swoop. Sure shot a horny swoop. Sure shot a horny swoop. It's good enough for me. It was good from a dear old day. You got a way of walking.
You got a way of talking,
And it's something about you.
and now I know I never ever wanna be without you.
So call me Patty, Rolling Stone of a dreadful amount of Jew. Just call me Patty, Rolling Stone, but I'm howling the Kaylee moon. Call me Patty, F is all, F is all. F is all, F is all. F is all, F is all.
Anyway, that's it for this video about the Pogues and Shane MacGowan. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it inspires you to check out their music. That's why I make these videos. Just know that I appreciate you taking the time. But remember, like, comment, share, subscribe to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.